Joining me now is Neama Rahmani. He's a former federal prosecutor from California. He's been following this case closely for years. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. All right, so what happens now? Let's say the DA does decide that he wants to ask for a resentencing. What happens?
Well, Dan, ultimately it's up to the judge, but if the defense is asking for the first-degree murder counts to be reduced to manslaughter under an imperfect self-defense theory, and the prosecution doesn't object, very likely the judge is going to grant that request, and the Menendez brothers are going to be free because under California law, of course, manslaughter carries a maximum 10-year sentence, and the brothers have already served 35 years.
So I was a little surprised that the DA held this press conference to announce he hasn't made a decision, which I thought was a little bit odd, but this is a little bit more from the DA of what he said this evening.
We have a moral and an ethical obligation to review what is being presented to us and make a determination based on a resentencing side, whether they deserve to be resentenced, even though they were clearly the murderers, because they have been in prison for 35 years and they have paid back their dues to society, or whether habeas is appropriate if there was evidence that was not presented to the court at that time, and had that evidence been presented, perhaps a jury would have come to a different conclusion.
That's a great summary of the legal standard, but why is he holding a press conference to just announce that it may be? He's had the evidence now. We've known about the new evidence. What could be taking so long?
Well, Dan, we're in the middle of a highly contentious race here in LA County, and District Attorney George Gascón is under a lot of political pressure right now. And let's be honest, the Netflix documentary Monsters has drawn a lot of attention to the case. There are a lot of folks who are watching NewsNation right now and who are following on social media that have a lot of sympathy for both Lyle and Erik because of the abuse that they suffered at the hands of their father and the mother's assistance in covering it up and not protecting them. So this is a hot button political issue right now, and George Gascón may score some points if he sides with the defense here, and maybe, just maybe, it'll help him get reelected.
Right, but just say it. I mean, look, I think that they should be resentenced. I've covered the Menendez case for years. The fact that they've now served, 34 years or whatever it is, it does seem to me that they ought to be released based on this new evidence. Do you agree?
Well, I agree with you, Dan. The fair and just thing to do would be to release the Menendez brothers after 35 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot has changed since the late 80s in terms of knowledge of sex abuse, and evidence that should have probably come in was excluded. And there were some reports that were retracted that that's exactly what George Gascón was going to do. But he then held this press conference where he said, well, I'm going to wait and see what happens at the end of November. So maybe he's just pushing this out till after the election. Who knows?
Well, boy, that's frustrating if this is that political, but I guess that's life. Neama Rahmani, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your screen. And don't forget, click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.